Can someone chat and let me know if y'all can see my screen, please?
I can. It looks perfect. Very clear.
Okay, very good. Thank you. Thank you, Tyler.
You're welcome.
There we go. Hi, I am Kimberly Moore, National Channel Manager for IGI, and today we have Tyler Ward, our VP of Security, to discuss selling cybersecurity in the channel. And today we will be focusing on pen testing. So those of you not familiar with our company, we are based in Rochester, New York. We've been on the forefront of disruptive technology for over 33 years. We are the proud creators of Nodeware, which is our vulnerability management tool, which gives you 24/7 protection of anything that is connected to the internet via an IP. We are also proud to be partnered with some of the best in the business as far as master agencies and distributors. We offer managed security services, and all of our employees have wonderful credentials here at IGI. Many hold CISSPs or MBAs to be able to assist you and your clients with any of their security needs. We work in all different sectors, from small independent sole proprietors all the way up to very large federal agencies. Our goal is to solve, simplify, and secure. One of the most important facts is that we have halted many cyber attacks in their tracks and helped customers recover from significant cyber incidences. Today, what we want to focus on is the important topic of cybersecurity and what companies can do to mitigate risk by performing penetration testing. Every day we hear about cybersecurity, whether it's another hack or breach, or we personally know someone that's been the victim of identity theft or ransomware. Ransomware is at 39% of all reported data breaches. What I found most interesting was that if you have an incident, it may not be just a singular event. It may be a Trojan horse, or they may sit there on your network undetected for years and then continue to hit you. At the end of last year, we actually dealt with a couple of incident responses where people were dealing with ransomware for the second time in the same calendar year. So if someone is hacking into your system and encrypting your files, or having ransomware, or denial of service, or even transferring money out of your account, this could be very costly to your organization or your clients' organizations. So every company really needs to be aware, astute, and alert of any potential attacks. We find that 93% of all incidences investigated began with human error. Most people want to be helpful, or they receive an email that they think looks legitimate, and they click on it. Phishing attacks result in a very high success rate. So we want to be sure to protect everyone in the organization that has access to your network. The cybersecurity landscape is always changing and becoming more complex. So everything is connected to the internet. We now have HVAC systems, smartphones, IoT devices, cameras. Any of these are potential threats to your organization. The other thing is that even though there's more regulations, there's no overarching umbrella or standards for all businesses. So a lot of businesses have to have a mix of PCI, HIPAA, high trust, NIST. We help solve and simplify all of that in your business, either internal or external. So what we do know is that cybersecurity, you hear about it every single day. It's not just political state actors anymore. It's also hacktivists and organizations like Anonymous or WikiLeaks, or even just kids who want to change their grades. So what we do is a layered defense. Tyler, can you tell us how pen testing fits into this layered defense?
I would be happy to, Kimberly. Thank you very much for that upfront information and a little bit about our company. And just going off what Kimberly was talking about, as you can see, we've got a little bit of a noisy graphic here. There's a lot of different layers for cybersecurity, as we all know. And these are some of those layers that are listed out here. Now, however, you may be asking yourself, what do these have to do with penetration testing specifically? Right. So these are all the different areas of consideration. Antivirus and firewalls alone are no longer effective in 2019, in 2018, 2017. They're just not effective anymore. And I think everybody has come to the understanding that we need a layered defense. We need continuous monitoring. Now, what better way to test out an organization's defenses than when they're under an active, either a real world or a simulated attack, right? So, great way to test out all of the defenses. Our next slide here, I'm going to let you read through the quote up there, the mock quote. But this is actually really common. And at first we looked at this slide and we looked at this quote and we laughed a little bit. And we took some polls from our salespeople and what we're seeing out there. This is actually really common. Vulnerability assessments are not penetration tests, right? So our customers and our partners need to understand what is being proposed, what is being paid for, as we look across the different regulations, whether we take PCI or DFARS or whatever kind of NIST framework that you're working with, and those annual penetration testing requirements. A vulnerability scan or a vulnerability assessment is not a penetration test. And a lot of service providers out there make that mistake of giving quotes to their clients because of a lack of understanding on their part. But penetration testing is not vulnerability assessments and vice versa. So on numerous occasions, we have clients that have been sold a previous penetration test only to find out that no pen testing was even performed. So we encourage all of our partners and our clients to ask questions before they buy. Okay, so a little bit about the different levels of penetration testing, and this is one of the more serious portions of our job. However, it is very engaging for us and for our clients. It's a very intimate level of security when you have the green light to break into a company. So it's a very good test of that measure. So we have different levels of pen testing. We have external systems. Those are things like web servers and firewalls and websites and anything related hanging to the outside. IoT devices. Kimberly mentioned HVAC systems. A lot of organizations have those to the outside, publicly facing cameras, things like that. Internal systems are anything from internal servers, workstations, internal cloud systems within AWS and Azure, and then some other cloud service providers, internal laptops, and everything in between. That's your internal layer. Social engineering, this is by far one of the most exploited, if not the most exploited front for penetration testing. This is the exploitation of humans, right? So cold calling, phishing emails, yeah, you name it, vishing, where it's voice phishing now, so they call it vishing. There's a lot of different variants of this. Showing up to an organization dressed as a FedEx worker, right? It seems our motto is if you have a clipboard, a construction vest, and a pencil, you can get into just about any building. And then physical security. We're going to talk a little bit more about physical security, but this is basically measuring the weaknesses in physical defenses. Okay, so our next slide here, these screenshots are just a few of the tools in our toolkit. So if you look to the top left there, top left picture, that is an RFID card. We have skimmers that can, if we grab a company badge, we can replicate that badge and put it through the system, and it acts just like that original badge. Top right is one of my personal favorites. That is a 2200 megawatt Yagi antenna in which we can hack Wi-Fi from up to 4 kilometers away. So we don't need to be near our client's building or their physical facilities to get into their Wi-Fi, right? We can do that from a distance. Bottom left is a lockpick hacking set, and that's a little bit of an automated tool to get into some different locks. And then bottom right, we've got a couple of tools down there. That one on the bottom is actually a wireless keylogger. It's very small. It's about the size of a quarter, and you plug it into the back of a computer in line with a keyboard, either a wireless keyboard or a plugged-in keyboard, and you can go from a distance, 25, 50 meters away, pick up a Wi-Fi signal and read everything that somebody's typing and record it. And also the picture right above that, that is what looks like an Ethernet adapter. That's actually what's called a LAN turtle. I don't know where they come up with these names for it, but it's kind of funny. The LAN turtle sits in line with any piece of equipment, whether it be behind a printer, a workstation in your server room, data center. Most organizations would never even know. They would never even recognize these things. They look very innocent. And that is actually a backdoor into a network. So on a regular basis, our team uses these types of tools to gain access to physical facilities and networks. Hackers have these tools as well. We buy these off the internet. You don't need any special license to procure these. So when we think of physical security, we think of hackers, right? Who would want to do this? Who would target my building, my physical infrastructure? Well, we see disgruntled employees doing this all the time. An employee gets fired, comes back into the building, steals some files, steals some computers, some sensitive data, comes in and tries to perform sabotage, right? Things can get really nasty with disgruntled employees. Physical security is an integral part of any defense. That's the point that we're trying to drive home, and that's the message behind our testing. Okay, our first one that we're going to get into is actually, if you can go up one. Yep, perfect. So white box testing. So you're going to hear through the course of, talking to your clients about the different types of pen testing that they're looking for. There are actually 3 main types. So we're going to give you a little bit of clarity on each type. So white box testing, otherwise called clear box testing, is a penetration test in which we gather all of the information right up front about all of the systems, the number of users, the specific targets, the targets that are off limits. So if they have a sensitive web server, a sensitive system within the network, knock phone systems internally usually are off limits because they tend to go down and they can't be patched. I know you probably see that a lot. But these are the types of white box pen testing is where we gather all the information up front, the architecture of the network. We lay everything out with the client, define a limited scope or a broad scope. It can be both, but we define every single target. We're not allowed to creep outside of that scope. So everything, a full picture is painted prior to engaging to ensure that that scope does not extend beyond those boundaries. Okay. Gray box testing. So as you can see, we're going through the pen testing types. We have white box, gray box, and then black box. Gray box sits right in the middle here. And this is a little bit less information is gathered up front. And this is our most common. A lot of organizations say we need a white box test, but the majority of organizations that we work with, they don't understand all of the assets that they have internally or externally. So we end up usually doing a gray box. We'll collect a little bit of information up front. We'll gather the scope, how many systems, estimate about how many systems, no network diagram, or if there is a network diagram, it's inaccurate, it needs to be updated. We gather some information up front, define some sort of scope, and we're given a little bit of leeway to say, yes, if for example, if you can't get in through these means, you're allowed to social engineer our help desk. Right? These are gray box methodologies. They're not black box to where we know nothing. We'll get into that in a second. And they're not white box to where we know literally everything, but we know some information about the network, some information about the scope, and our methods of attack are relayed to our client. Okay, this is also the most common type. Like I said, the clients rarely understand their complete and accurate infrastructure. Okay, black box testing. This is where things get really interesting. So the interesting thing about black box testing in our approach, and especially when we're gathering, quote unquote, gathering the information from our client, if a client tells us that they want a black box pen test, that means exploitation by any means. So we can exploit their people, their processes, their technology, any kinds of externally facing devices who are allowed to socially engineer their employees. There's a pretty big blanket clause that goes onto these types of projects just because of the intrusive nature of these tests. They are very good measurements of an organization's security from a real world standpoint, right? So we're attacking organizations, emulating the movements of attackers that are out there in the wild, doing the same things that they're doing, obviously without, launching a denial of service attack or breaking the window of a company. But we're emulating those real world types of attacks. So we socially engineer, we may throw phishing attacks at the customer, exploitation of wireless networks, of physical facilities, routers, switches, website servers, anything that you can think of that we're going to use to try to get into these companies. And like I said, this is a great snapshot into your security from a true attacker standpoint. Okay, so penetration testing, why is it important, right? So we have regulatory requirements. Some organizations have these requirements mandated by laws. We talk through things like PCI and DFARS and NIST and HIPAA. They have these annual requirements that they actually have to do pen testing. They don't have a choice. Some other organizations that don't fall under any regulatory requirements are just performing due diligence for their own knowledge, right? They're trying to test out their cybersecurity posture, which is absolutely fantastic. We encourage every organization to do so. I think in 2019, most organizations they're understanding that this is important. So it's very uncommon that we have to stress the importance of pen testing. And also, this is a real world snapshot of your defenses. So in pen testing, you never know what you may uncover and what kind of value that provides for your clients. We have a little bit of a case study based on that. So one time we were performing a pen test on a live project for a client. It was a city municipality. During the testing, we halted the testing. We contacted the client because we uncovered a breach, an actual breach. So where we found that attackers had compromised the network and they were leveraging it as a staging point for other attacks. And their network, their public IP addresses, were actually listed as nodes in the dark web. So if I'm sure you've heard a little bit about the dark web. Point in case, you never know what you may uncover. The value may extend well beyond just testing the defenses. You actually may uncover a breach at some point in time. Okay, so another case study we have here, and these are really powerful. So a client contacted us. They wanted a single penetration test. Most firms, and we see these quotes go out all the time, and we do competitive quotes against other companies, most firms would just provide a quote back without hesitation. However, we have some upfront information that we always collect from our clients. We ask very important questions, critical core questions. What's the business driver behind this request? Why do you want this? Why do you need this test? Is it internal security diligence, as we talked about before? Have you expanded your company, new acquisition, new infrastructure? Are you trying to test that out, make sure that it's secure? What's the scope, right? Does this require social engineering, the things that we talked about before? The timeline, does this need to be performed within the next week, or is this in this first or second quarter? What are the ultimate goals for this engagement? So after asking these important critical questions, we found out that the client was actually satisfying a regulatory requirement under PCI. They had no idea what else they had to perform under PCI. They were notified that they had a few small requirements to satisfy penetration testing annually and quarterly vulnerability scanning, right? So we uncovered the S opportunities, and upon recognizing that regulatory requirement, the doors opened for new opportunities. Okay, so the solution actually turned from that one-time engagement to it turned from a $5,000 limited scope penetration test to a $3,500 monthly service subscription for 3 years, including all of those things that you see there: external pen testing annually, internal pen testing annually, physical penetration testing, incident response retainer. We wrote policies and procedures for them under PCI, implemented Nodeware to satisfy their vulnerability management requirement, continuous threat protection package. We have an interesting package for basic threat protection for these types of clients. And then we did a review of their current security posture. We did a full-blown, full-scope security assessment, very comprehensive. So these are some of the opportunities that we're trying to uncover that we are very, very good at uncovering. Our salespeople are extremely talented, and they ask the right questions up front, and they're educated on the process and some of these regulations, so they understand that there's more out there. So IGI is going to provide some sales battle cards to you and to your representatives to sell these cybersecurity offerings with precision, right? Just in this manner of uncovering those opportunities. So there's always more, and sometimes our clients are simply unaware of their obligations. So we find it that it's our responsibility to educate them. That was a great case study. So what's the result of that case study? It goes on our motto of becoming a trusted advisor to our clients, of not selling a single service, of being there for them in the long run, right? In our experience in responding to so many breaches, we understand how paramount it is to be with our clients for the long run, to understand their networks. At one point, the chief of the NSA said that somebody asked him a question and said, why are attackers getting into companies? And he said, before these attackers even mount their attack on these networks, they understand the networks better than the people that created them. That's a fundamental problem. That's why becoming a trusted advisor and an integrated service provider for the long run is so important. So what was the result of that case study? IGI pivoted from being a single service provider to a deeply integrated long-term partner. How? Education. We educated our client. We educated the partner. We educated everybody involved with this process on the annual requirements under PCI. Don't get too hung up on PCI because there's a lot of other regulations out there that require the same exact thing. So cybersecurity business right now is booming for a few different reasons: attacks and regulations. So we took time to understand the goals, the requirements, the pain points, and everything in between. And we educated our client, and it opened up multiple doors on that opportunity. Some of the target verticals for pen testing, as I talked about just a second ago, there are many regulations out there. Okay, compliance is often, people perform pen tests to satisfy regulatory requirements, but it opens doors to other security services and solutions. So we take a step back, look at the holistic approach to security, with pen testing as a key component of that. So most of the companies and industries listed above in here in this slide have some type of regulatory requirement for pen testing, at least annually, if not more frequent. Federal contractors and some manufacturers that sell to the federal government and the defense industry have DFARS. Federal agencies have NIST, FedRAMP, FISMA. Insurance and banking, especially in New York State, have New York State DFS. And in a lot of cases, they don't even have to be in New York State. If they do business in New York State, they have New York State DFS. Critical infrastructure, there's NERC, NERC-CIP, if you're familiar with that. In legal environments, you can find HIPAA, PCI, Graham-Leach-Bliley. I mean, there are a ton of regulations for legal because they handle so much information. So what we're trying to say is there are regulations for almost every single industry out there, and they have cybersecurity requirements. And with that, I will turn it back over to Kimberly to talk about the power of partners. Thank you.
Thank you, Tyler. That was very informative. I want to check with our team to see if there's any questions. Kind of just stop and pause for a minute because that was a lot of great information. We really see your all of your years of experience in the military, the NSA, and private sector really coming through there on that information. And I think it's important to point out that most questions we get around cybersecurity come through penetration testing. So it's very important, and I really like how you highlighted that. It's just kind of the tip of the iceberg there when you're having questions about cybersecurity. And, partners, you guys know that you are the trusted advisors. You have been assisting them with a lot of their IT telecom needs, and that's now spilling into security. There's been, like Tyler showed us, the perimeter of defenses around, firewalls and antivirus and malware, but we really have to go deeper than that. So cybersecurity is different than most other sales verticals because there's regulations and laws that require organizations to implement adequate security measures. Also, cyber attacks are hitting individual businesses every single day. So clients need to understand the need they're looking for. and the partnerships that they want to create with companies, not just products. So we really do become an integral part of their business operations that flows through every point in their organization, all the way down to the vendors and people that they're selling to. So people that are supplying them and people that they're selling to. So gaining the trust of the partners and clients is critical. Our mission is to bring military-grade cybersecurity solutions and consulting to the forefront of every business market. We integrate, complement, and defend organizations through our IGI Cyber Warrior ethos. And that definitely comes from having Tyler Ward on our team. So very happy about that. So how can we help? So we have some very fundamental core offerings. We mentioned Nodeware. We're the OEM of that to do vulnerability assessments. We discussed penetration testing today in detail. Incident response. So if your clients know or think that they've had an incident, time is of the essence. Get us engaged. If we can get engaged in the first few hours of that incident, we can really help, figure out, do some threat hunting, can figure out where the problem is, contain it, figure out how to eradicate it, remedy it, and then look at the lessons learned. So we want to be sure that we really understand what has happened and what we can do to avoid any type of incidences or hackings in the future. We help companies with compliance readiness assessments. So people who are facing audits for PCI or HIPAA or NIST or ISO audits, we can help prepare organizations to make sure that they're going to pass those audits. That's really important. Being very proactive in security is much better than being reactive for a lot of different reasons, right? Because if your systems are infiltrated, then you could be, like I said, facing a denial of service or encryption or ransomware. It can be a lot more expensive than, paying for protection up front. So kind of like an apple a day. It's the same thing in security. We also have virtual CISO assistance here, which is very helpful in either an event management, a SIEM tool, or a security operations center as a SOC. And doing security awareness training for clients as well. That can be as far as the employees, reviewing policies and procedures, making sure that your disaster recovery plan is in place, that your red and blue teams are ready to go if anything happens. And we can package that all up into a managed security service. So really bundling those services that a client needs. So what do we want to do when we're talking to clients? I know that many of you ask, where do I start? When you're strategizing with your clients, you may want to use these questions to uncover opportunities. These questions offer great insights into what they're doing or not doing. I also have a very detailed qualification questionnaire. If you're interested in that, I'm happy to send that to you. But please remember that the IGI team is here to support you every step of the way. And we can do that in a variety of ways, through discovery calls or co-branded marketing. We also offer not for resale Nodeware licenses that we can give you to put on your network and monitor your own vulnerabilities. You can also use that license to show your clients how Nodeware works. It is very intuitive and user-friendly. We can provide an iframe for you to integrate into your website so that you can extend those 2-week trials to your clients of Nodeware. And it's tied back to your agent ID so that you are building that monthly revenue. Another benefit that is driving conversations and appointments is our co-branded marketing campaigns. So I'm happy to set up a call with you to discuss the best strategy for your organization. We have dedicated and regionalized support. I'm happy to put you in touch with the right resource for all of your engagements. So as we wrap it up, let me check and see. Megan, do we have any questions come in?
Kimberly, I'm not seeing any questions coming in here on our end.
Great. I believe that we may have maybe you could, if anybody can chat us and let us know if anyone is currently engaged in selling security to their clients or pen testing. The chat is, there's a poll open.
Yeah, that's actually a really good poll. And also, if anybody has any questions about any technical aspect about what we do at IGI and how we operate our pen testing team, please let us know. I'm always happy to geek out with everybody and talk about our processes a little bit. So fire away with any questions that you have in the chat window as well.
All right,
Kimberly,
looks like we have 30%
vote
who voted.
Wait, I'm sorry, Megan, could you repeat that?
Sure, yep. Just 30% of people have submitted their answer, and it looks like everyone answered no, but we plan to. Let me just
Very
have another
good.
poll question. Yep. Looks like there's another question that came in. It says, I'm positioning managed IDS/IPS. How would IGI come into this conversation?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So from a best practice, I would say, in short, coming in from a consultative standpoint, with you to determine not only the best way to manage IDS, manage IPS, but how you can use that to cultivate new business, right? So that, to me, when we have any kind of platform launch with our partners, and they're launching either a SIM platform or a managed IDS, managed IPS, what you're soon going to have access to are a lot of alerts and alarms. And what comes after those alerts and alarms is incident response. So I would say we probably want to strike up the question about that transition to when you go live with those platforms, your customers go live with that platform, what is going to be the response to that? How are things going to be responded to? Is that an incident response retainer? And what is the approach going to be behind that good intelligence that's now going to be coming in through that funnel?
Tyler, can you just tell everyone on the call what IDS and IPS means?
Absolutely. So IDS is intrusion detection system. IPS is intrusion prevention system. So they're used synonymously sometimes. Some systems perform both of them. I assume that's probably what you're talking about with that question. Just keep in mind that IDS is only detection. IPS are true intrusion prevention. They will actually stop exploits from reaching systems, and they can be at the network. Both of these solutions can be at the network level and guard or detect threats from your edge or your perimeter, or they can be at the host-based level. That's what we call host-based IDS and host-based IPS. Yep. Good question. I skipped right over the explanation of what they are. Thank you.
And I have a few more questions here, since we have some time.
Yes, we do.
The next question is, we do mobile cybersecurity, private networks, private static IPs, and rules-based filtering. How can we work together?
So I would say let's have that conversation. That's probably a little bit of a deeper one to understand what your service model currently is and what you're seeing from your clients. Either way you slice it, we find that our partners do this. They do a few services that they do very, very well, and there's the things that are outside of the scope of their services, whether it be incident response or forensics or pen testing or any other service that we offer. So I'd say we probably want to look at integration and partnerships with those services, because your clients are operating in the same space and they may have requirements for other things that are in our book of business. So I'd say let's just strike up the initial conversation. We'll get an understanding of your business model and the services that you offer for your clients. And the same, learn how to cultivate that into something more and uncover more opportunities within that. We're very good at doing that.
Okay, and another question from Mike. What are the deliverables after a pen test?
So, yep. So the deliverables that's a really good question. So we've done a couple of them this week, and they can go either one of two ways. You can get really good news. Either way we look at it, it's good news. If you don't find a breach in the middle of a pen test, it's good news either way. So the results after a pen test we show the cyber kill chain. So Lockheed Martin developed a cyber kill chain a while back, and then some other organizations took hold of it. Basically, we show the exploitation, we show the vulnerability information that we found. So in every single one of our pen tests, the customer receives a free vulnerability assessment just by default. We're already measuring the vulnerability. So they're going to get the vulnerabilities on any system that was tested. And then we're going to show them the exploitation tactics that we use to get into the systems, used to get into their operations and social engineering, and then anything else in between. And then we can show them, depending on if we got into the systems, what type of sensitive data was accessed, how far could we go, where could we move laterally, and what does this mean for their business? One of the differentiators in our pen test is we put this into the context of the business. So the larger providers out there that will give you, a blanket quote for a pen test are going to show you simple things like vulnerabilities and how they exploited the system, and they're going to stop at that. We're going to show these organizations that, yes, we got into this system, but then we got into I'll give you a case in point. We did a pen test on a bank about a month ago. We were into the bank's security cameras, watching people load money into the vaults within 20 minutes of the test. To a bank, that's pretty good context. We can show them what could happen behind that. To other organizations, it may not mean so much. So they show everything from vulnerability discovery to full exploitation, stealing or theft of data, and then what could that possibly mean for your organization, for your customers' organizations? Really good question.
Okay, and you answered part of this question, I think, in the last answer, which is good. But the final question I have here is, why IGI and not company ABC? What are the components of a great pen or vulnerability testing provider?
Yes, absolutely. So this is my favorite question. I love this question. And this is something that we pride our team on, right? We have, our team is elite for a reason. Every person on our cybersecurity team has responded to a breach before. And I think that is extremely important in pen testing. You have companies that are on the offensive side of security that do pen testing that have never responded to a data breach. We've responded to over 100 of them. Our professionals have responded to over 100 different data breaches, ranging from hospitals and banks and any small business in between, mid-market enterprise breaches. We've responded to breaches in every single industry just about, and that puts really critical context to our exploitation methods, how we get into companies, and what could this possibly mean as far as damage goes. That's what we're trying to measure for our clients, and what better representative to measure the potential damage of a cyber attack than a company who has responded to and recovered companies from a cyber attack. So I would say this, I would encourage every single person out there who's looking for a pen test to check the pedigree of the service provider that they're about to go with and to ask, what kind of real world experience do you have? That is a very important question. I love that question. It's great.
Great. Well, we are at our time limit now. If there's any additional questions, please feel free to email or call us. Visit our website, igius.com. And thank you all for joining. Tyler, thank you so much for your time. Megan, thanks for pulling
everybody.
this together. Have a great day.
Thanks. Bye-bye.